had 6'6", 212 pounds from Lower Marion High School, making his final appearance at the Palace of Orange Hills in his 20th NBA season, 17th NBA All-Star, 4-time NBA All-Star MVP, 15-time member of the All-NBA team, 2-time NBA Final MVP, 2007 OA MVP league, 5-time NBA champion, 2-time Olympic gold medalist, and the third all-time leading scorer ever in the history of the NBA. Certainly, he has given us some great memories over the years. How about a big round of applause for, right now on the floor, number 24, the Black Mamba, Kobe Bryant.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand and join us in a moment of tribute. The NBA family and the sports world is mourning together over the tragic loss of Kobe Bryant, his daughter Gianna, and 7 other lives lost yesterday entirely too soon. Kobe's accomplishments over a 20-year NBA playing career rival the best to have ever touched a basketball. But it'll be his spirit, his competitive fire, his fearsome intellectual curiosity, and his graciousness with those he held closest that'll be admired and remembered as the lasting legacy of a life well lived. Please join the Detroit Pistons and the Cleveland Cavaliers and the entire NBA family as we honor the life of Kobe Bryant and send our thoughts and prayers to his family and everyone affected with 24 seconds of silence.
And welcome in to Views from the Sideline. It's Tuesday, January 28th, 2020, and the sports world and the world in general is shocked. We lost Kobe Bryant on Sunday due to a helicopter crash. As you just heard, that was George Blaha at last night's Pistons game. They did a 24-second tribute to him, and teams all over the league have been doing it. They've been taking 24-second violations. They've also been taking 8-second backcourt violations, and it's been super tough to watch all the interviews, but I've watched them all. Malik, how are you doing with all this?
Man, I've just today, I've really started to fully process it. I mean, the fact it was Kobe along with his daughter Gianna and 7 other people. I mean, such tragedy in such a blink of an eye. I mean, it was out of nowhere, and I honestly think I think a lot of us have never seen anything like this. Even my stepdad is in his 40s. A lot of his friends were around us when it happened, and they were saying the only thing that maybe comes close to this is when Magic Johnson came out with the HIV announcement. A lot of people thought he was gonna die after he announced that, but
Right.
yeah, this is something entirely different. The NBA has just been completely rocked. I'm surprised they still allowed those games to go on the day.
Yeah.
Because the players were just completely. A few players still had some big and nice games, but you could see players on the bench were completely emotionally just not there, and it was just a weird, just it wasn't a good feeling over those games.
Yeah, and the Grammys were also going on at the Staples Center.
Yeah,
So
a lot of people were saying that should have been canceled too, but
yeah, there was a lot going on, and just everybody was so thrown off by it, and it didn't really make sense. I don't know about you, but I saw it on Twitter, and I did what everybody else did, where you kind of what I first saw. So my first experience was that I saw people tweeting, "Don't let this be true. Don't let this be true." And I was like, "What the heck are they talking about? What's even going on?" And then all of a sudden I start seeing like these tweets about Kobe, and like Kobe starts trending. I'm like, what is this? And then I see like helicopter crash, and you start like adding up the things, and you're like, what the heck? And then it comes out that it was TMZ that first reported it. So people were like, not taking it entirely serious, and people were thinking that, somebody got something wrong. And then the one that got me was when Woj tweeted.
Yeah.
Because when
When
Woj
that
tweets,
yeah.
then so literally I was sitting next to my dad. I was at my parents' house, and I was sitting next to my dad, and my brother had just called my dad, and I like just looked down at my phone and saw the tweet, and and my dad even told me that I went like red in the face, and I never thought that something like that would affect me that much, but it threw me off so
Yeah.
much, and I was just in shock. And he's like, "What's wrong?" And I was like, "Kobe Bryant just passed away." And the crazy thing too is like everybody keeps talking is that he was at the Lakers game the night before,
Yeah.
where LeBron just passed him in the all-time scoring list, and all of a sudden he's gone. It was crazy, and of course, obviously, the news is all over it, and that's nothing but what you've
Yeah,
heard.
there were so many wild false reports that went like in those first 2 hours of people trying to figure things out. But yeah, when everybody's like started to come to the same conclusion
Mhm.
around like the third hour, and I was on my way to get food, and I hadn't been on Twitter in like hours, so I got a call from one of my best friends, and he was like, "Have you been on Twitter?" And I was like, "No, I was in line getting food." And he was like, "Everybody's saying Kobe Bryant was in a crash and he might have passed away." I was like, "Listen, I can't. What you just said to me, I can't fully process it. So I'm
Right.
just gonna hang up now. I'm gonna go on Twitter, and then I'm just gonna like see about this." And then I went on Twitter, like you said, everybody, please don't let this be true. TMZ was the main report. Kobe Bryant has passed after a helicopter crash. And once I got my food and I got in my car, I just kept saying like no over and over again. Like
Mhm.
this makes no sense. Like,
Yeah, it's like a weird feeling that you get.
yeah.
And you never expect that. Like you said, we've never really experienced that. I guess Michael Jackson is maybe the closest thing, but I
In
didn't
terms
have
of an icon, that's the
right.
only thing that's like close to it.
And I didn't have like that connection with Michael Jackson. Obviously, he's a little before our time, but still relevant. Um, and in the sports world, like not too many of the greats have passed away. I know there's been a big thing that they've been talking about the top 50 greatest players of all time in the NBA. Um, I think they said 3 of them have passed away, and it's Wilt Chamberlain, Pete Maravich, and now Kobe. So out of all those guys, like we say, Bill Russell every year shows up to All-Star games and things like that, and he
Yeah.
looks like he's been 100 for 30 years.
Yeah.
Um, so it's just crazy that Kobe is one of those guys that now is gone. And I think obviously the more tragic part, like you said, is when you found out that his daughter was on the helicopter with him, who was kind of becoming somewhat of an icon herself at only 13.
She was gonna be on her way to
Yeah.
it. We can never know, but it looked like she was gonna be on her way to becoming one of the greatest women's basketball players of all time.
Yeah.
I mean, the team she played on, they were just mowing down other girls' teams.
Mhm.
A lot of the girls on the team, like, they played up in age. Like, a lot of them are 14, 15-year-olds. Kobe had them playing the triangle offense.
Yeah.
And, like, they were just mowing down teams, and Gigi was the star of the team.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just insane to see all that just, like, just stop.
Yeah. And now you see so many players and coaches and news media coming out and talking about all their stories. And it's just so interesting to listen to all the different stories, because the one thing that like makes sense too is like Kobe was such a hard worker, and I think that's why so many people enjoyed his game, even if you didn't like him. Like I'll be honest, I wasn't the biggest fan of him at times, but that's mostly because '04 finals and stuff like that. Like the Pistons were good when he was good, and I just wanted to beat him because he's the best. But at the same time, like I always had way more respect for him than most other superstars because of the way that he worked. And then the interesting bit too is how so many people have been saying that when he got out of the league, he seemed like he became happier because, he had so many other things that he could do. He won an Academy Award right out of retirement. Um, he started coaching and just he found like this new life and that he was just starting it, and that's kind of like the sad part about it all. And I don't know. It's crazy to think about, and I still can't even think about it. And I like it's that feeling where you feel odd. Like, why do I feel so close knit to this
Yeah,
when
that's how everybody. That's how my stepdad reacted when I got back home. He said, "I feel like somebody somebody in my family just passed." He said that's kind of how it felt.
yeah, like it's close to that kind of feeling. Like you kind of feel uneasy about it. Like even me talking about
I
it
mean,
now, like
he's been a part of our lives since the beginning.
Mhm.
Literally, I was born in '96.
Yeah.
He was started in the NBA in '96.
Yeah.
My first recollection of NBA basketball, Kobe and Shaq, was what I remembered. 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah.
They were the guys, and then he became my favorite player as I went into teenage years. And yeah, it's just crazy.
Yeah, I even wore 24 in high school. I mean, part of it was Kobe, and then the other part was that my dad was 42, so doing the reversed, and we had different play styles, made it fun. But it was like wearing 24. It felt good knowing that you're like, oh, Kobe wears 24. All right, cool. Um, so it's just like one of those little things, and we were talking before the show is that and when we did our top 10 all-time favorite players, Malik, you had him at number 1. Do you want to just reiterate what the reasoning was for all that? Just I know part of it is just
Yeah.
growing up with it, but
I mean, as I started to get more into basketball, once I hit the age of like 11, 12, I hit a growth spurt, and my athleticism started to come, and I had always loved basketball, but like I had started to like figure out how to play the game at that time.
yeah, you hit that threshold where
Exactly. Yeah, I was starting to figure out the game, and my body was catching up to that as well. So I started watching college and NBA basketball almost every single night after I get done doing homework, and if I wasn't playing video games, I was watching basketball games. And whenever the Lakers were on, it was just something about the way Kobe played, especially in playoff games. Like seeing him 19 years old in those Phoenix playoff series, battling, like hitting those game winners. And then there was the 81-point game, which I remember being a kid and I thought that was a glitch when it went across the bottom of the ticker on ESPN.
yeah.
I was just like, that doesn't sound right. That sounds crazy. But really, what made me like an intense fan of Kobe Bryant was I'm not sure if you remember, there was a hour-long, like short Spike Lee documentary that came on ESPN in like 2008, I believe. It was called Kobe Doing Work.
Hmm.
And it was a Spike Lee directed, Kobe narrated look at, it was just a 1 game long, like Kobe dissecting his game and like dissecting what the Lakers do when they play. I can't remember who they played. It might have been the Spurs or something, but it was just a Lakers home game. And it was no commercials, just an hour long of Kobe dissecting why he does the things he does, his style of play, his teammates, how he gets them incorporated, how he works off with Phil Jackson. And I was just engrossed from like, I remember when the commercials came out, I was like, I have to watch this. And watching it as an 11, 12-year-old, like that kind of unlocked like what basketball was in my brain. Up until that time, it was just a fun game to play. Slam dunks, crossovers, like it was just fun. And then when I watched that, it was like, this is a guy that like, I never thought basketball was something like this.
Mm-hmm.
The thought that goes into it, the killer mentality, the IQ, like all of that. Kobe was the first person I realized basketball was something more than just excitement and slam dunks and all that. So ever since then, I became a Lakers fan. After that, I was a fan through the championships, and yeah, the rest is history after that. So Kobe was my guy. All my friends around me were LeBron fans at the time.
Mm-hmm.
He was the popular guy for people of our age,
Right.
around the early like 2007, 8, 9 years.
It was
So, yeah.
basically between Kobe Bryant and Allen Iverson for the most part.
Yeah, early 2000s it was AI, and then it started transitioning into LeBron
Hmm.
over those years.
Yeah. One of the things that I remember the most, and it's going to get real nerdy in here, but uh, one of my I've got big into video games, and like I remember playing. My dad had the Nintendo Entertainment System, the NES from way back when. He had like Magic versus Larry versus Magic or whatever, and all those little games. So then when I hit, I would have been about 7 years old or so, and NBA Courtside came out, and Kobe Bryant was on the cartridge for the N64. Uh, that was a big deal. And then from then on out, like obviously I fell in love with basketball video games as much as I did the actual game. And anytime I would create a player or something, I would always use Kobe's shot because it was like the coolest looking thing in any game, and even in real life.
It's one of the most automatic shots in basketball game history.
And even in just real life, like his shot was always so smooth. And me being a very proficient shooter, I'll toot my own horn a little bit. But always enjoying shooting so much. And I would study guys, how they shot and what they did when they shot. And Kobe's was just so smooth, and he had such cool form. And there was like a style to it, but it was also correct. Like it wasn't oddball and weird. And it just worked for him. And I always wanted to like emulate that. So I was definitely one of those kids growing up that would like do turnaround fadeaways and yell Kobe. Like obviously everybody did, but I would do it constantly, and it was so much fun. And that's like the weirdest culture that my generation created, was just yelling Kobe whenever they shot anything. And the biggest thing that they've been talking about is throwing like paper into a trash can and you do it.
Yeah.
That's like so funny when people say that, because I just remember me and my friends did that all the time. And that kind of stuff is cool that, you know, he left that kind of mark on just everybody. Even people that didn't even like basketball, like they knew what that was and everything. So that was cool.
When you knew the name Kobe, it resonated. Even if you didn't know basketball, he was one of those legends.
Yeah, and the other thing too is that like in his rookie season, he averaged 7 points. He was not great.
He airballed 4 straight shots in the playoff.
I was going to say,
Utah, yeah.
In his first playoff appearance, he airballed the ball multiple times.
Yeah. And think about, what rookies do you think in the past 10, even 20 years would rebound from that?
Right.
Who would be able to come back? His second year, he was an all-star.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
he could have been a Charlotte Hornet.
He could have.
But he was traded on draft night because Jerry West knew that he was going to be something good.
Yeah.
The other thing that's also interesting that I've heard like Detroit sports talk radios and stuff talk about is that there were 2 occasions where Kobe Bryant was almost sent to the Detroit Pistons. There was one in 2000 when they tried to trade Grant Hill, and they offered Grant Hill for Kobe Bryant, which would have been really interesting. And then the most famous one was in 2007, when it was basically going to be about Kobe for, I think it was about Rip Hamilton, Tayshaun Prince, and then maybe a young guy in a pick or something like that. I think it was like Amir Johnson at the time. And the Lakers were pretty much all set to go with the trade, and so was Kobe at one point. So the trade was going to go through, and apparently it was only the Pistons and the Bulls. But Kobe eventually sat down, I guess, with Jerry West, and Jerry West kind of talked him out of it. So he dropped the Pistons trade, unfortunately, when they had pretty much, it was set in stone that they could have done it. And then I think the Bulls deal fell flat shortly after or something. I think that's when the Bulls were trying to create a small super team. I think they could have gotten Melo or something weird.
In 2003 or 4, he was going to leave. He was just going to, in free agency, he was just going to go to Chicago.
Yeah. So there was multiple times where Kobe was just possibly going to leave the Lakers. And he never did. And he ended up playing there for 20 years. So he played almost half of his lifespan, because he was 41 in the NBA, which is insane to think about. And he had a good career. He had a couple bumps in the road, obviously. had a couple legal issues. He had a couple injury issues. That's another thing I was going to mention too. Is when you brought up the your little documentary that you said that Spike Lee made. Another really good one is when Showtime came up with, what was it called, the Muse.
Yeah.
After he had tore his Achilles, and it was like showing his rehab and all that stuff. That was a really cool documentary, I think. And that's just like another one of those moments that I remember vividly, is when he's tore his Achilles and he came back on the court to shoot a free throw before he left the game. And he made them, which is crazy. So right now we're going to talk about kind of like our top Kobe moments. Malik has a couple more, so I'll let you kind of go first. And then when we get into more of like a top 5, I'll chime in because I have some, and not in a particular order necessarily, but we'll just talk about some of the moments that we remember the most, even though like we're not in LA and we're not seeing Kobe every night.
Yeah. So a few honorable mentions. First of all, the reason why from the start why Kobe became my guy, even though he wasn't like I liked a whole bunch of players when I was a kid, but the first championship of the three-peat in the 99-2000 season, the one that put him on the map, it was the reason why Kobe and Shaq were so amazing to me, and how they kept winning championships. Then the dunk on LeBron in the 2011 NBA All-Star Game, kind of an underrated one. I was really happy about that one when it happened because, yeah. The free throws on the torn Achilles in 2012. That's a legendary one that I hope people remember, because I don't think I've seen another NBA player do something like that. Most people just leave out the game. He walked back on the court and made sure to just shoot
the only other one I can think about, and I wasn't there, but my dad always talks about it, and I've seen the highlights, obviously, is when Isaiah Thomas played in the playoffs, basically on one knee.
Yeah.
Other than that, there's not too many guys that have done it before.
Yeah. And then this is an obscure one, but I think you might remember it, and a lot of NBA fans do. 2013, they're playing against the Raptors in LA. Kobe hits 3 straight threes in the fourth quarter to take the game into overtime, and then he wins the game with a game-winning dunk. It was one of the most clutch performances I've ever seen Kobe have. If you don't remember it, go look it up. It was absolutely insane. Like the shots got more difficult each time, and then in overtime, he just drove down the lane and like it completely embarrassed him. And then the last honorable mention is the famous game winner to beat Phoenix in 2006, the one where he pumps his fist, pulls his jersey like to the side. One of the most iconic plays in NBA history.
A little background on that one is that was the year that Phoenix was dominant. Like they won over 60 wins, and they had such a different play style than everybody else. People thought that was the year that the Suns were going to figure it out, and they never did because Kobe stopped them. All right. So do you have? Were those all honorable mentions?
Yeah, those are honorable mentions.
All right, so get into your list.
So my 5, the 61 in the Garden against the Knicks,
which was at that point was the Madison Square Garden record.
Yeah, and this is around that time when I started becoming a full-fledged Lakers fan because of Kobe, and honestly, I love that whole team. I'm pretty sure I had that 08, 09 Lakers, 09-10 Lakers team is my favorite team in NBA history. I loved Pau Gasol. I loved Lamar Odom. I loved how that whole team just fit together. But yeah, that 61 in New York, he put his entire repertoire of skills on display, and he was creating moves on as it was going. I remember that was the first time I ever saw somebody. He dribbled up to the free throw line, pump fake down a mid range, spun around the opposite way, and hit a mid range off the backboard. And I was like, I didn't know you could do stuff. I thought that was something like a travel. I didn't know you could do stuff like that. Yeah, he had insane passes, dropping them off to Pau Gasol. He was unstoppable that whole game. Spike Lee was just giving him applause the whole time. He couldn't even deny the greatness of what Kobe was doing that night. So yeah, that 61 in the Garden is one of the best.
Yeah. All right, what's your number 9? I'll join you when we get to. How
Well,
many do I have?
I'm just doing the like 5.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay.
The honorable mentions were pretty much my like 10 through 6.
Okay. Okay. So then, what I'm gonna put it, I'll do my honorable mentions then
Okay.
really quick. So mine, I was gonna put the Kobe Achilles shooting the free throw.
Yeah.
That's always super impressive. The other one was gonna be winning the dunk contest in his rookie year in warmups, which not many people have done.
Well, I think he did his first dunk in his like jacket and then he took
Yeah,
it off,
I think
but
he kept like taking off layers as he
Yeah.
would go. But and then my biggest honorable mention that almost made it in the top 5 is the famous Matt Barnes no flinch Kobe.
Oh, all-time great.
Which there's obviously different angles these days that we've seen are not
Listen.
as impressive, but it doesn't matter because the legend still lives.
Will we ever see a player with that much fire in his eyes? And that I don't think we'll ever see a player with that much focus again.
Yeah, so for anybody that doesn't know or they just want to look it up, just look up Kobe Bryant, Matt Barnes, no flinch or something like that. Anything like that it'll immediately pop up. Matt Barnes was throwing a inbounds pass from under their own basket and he pump faked right in Kobe's face and Kobe didn't move at all.
Oh yeah,
and he kind of gave him a little smirk.
He was just like bouncing back and forth.
Yeah.
And when Matt just threw it at him, he just stared at him.
And the coolest story about that is that, especially with all these players kind of telling their own stories lately, Matt Barnes was on ESPN the other day, and he was kind of retelling that story again, and he said, yeah, and then the next year I joined up with Kobe because he said anybody that's, able to mess with me can play with me.
Yeah.
So it's funny how, like, guys like that can become friends just over something just because you're tough.
Oh yeah,
and you can
most
handle
people
that.
wouldn't have the heart to
Right.
play around with Kobe, but
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, that was cool for sure. So what's your number 4 then?
My number 4 is the Lakers 2010 championship versus the Celtics. This was really like my first ever. Well, the 2008 final series was my first look into the rivalry because for an extended period of our childhood, the Celtics weren't good.
Mm-hmm.
They had that like short stint in like 2002 when they made the Eastern Conference Finals and Paul Pierce was just playing out of his mind and they had Antoine Walker. But then they lost Antoine Walker and a lot of their pieces either got old or left and it was just Paul Pierce for a few years and it was just bad basketball there.
Yep.
And Shaq left LA, Kobe was in LA by himself, so it wasn't much of a rivalry. 2008 was when it first came back in that final series and then
Mm-hmm.
2010 was like, to me, that was the last real year of the Celtics-Lakers series. Every time they played in the regular season, it was a big deal. Everybody felt like that finals matchup was coming, and it was serious. You had all the characters, KG, Ray Allen, Kobe, Pau Gasol, Rondo, Derek Fisher. You just went down the list. Metta World Peace. You could go down the whole list of just the matchups were crazy. The rivalry was back to where it used to be, and the Lakers ended up winning it in 7 in a close game. And yeah. That was maybe like one of the like top 3 final series of this past decade.
Yep. That was going to be my number 4 as well, actually. So basically the same reasons. It goes to Game 7. It's Lakers Celtics. I actually hated both teams at the time. I really hated the Celtics.
Oh yeah, as a Pistons, I hated them.
I hated
so
the Celtics.
much.
The biggest reason I hated the Celtics is because Kevin Garnett at one point was one of my favorite players. Ray Allen at one point was one of my favorite players. And then they joined up. And at that time, I hated teams joining up because it was like right after the whole Miami Heat thing.
It also seemed like the Pistons would always get so close to beating them.
Yeah.
And the Celtics would always beat them in the end.
Mhm.
So yeah, that was annoying too.
Yeah. And at this time, the Pistons were already starting to become trash. So I was almost just done with the NBA. And the Lakers, I wasn't a big fan of either. I mean, I don't know. It just, but like, still bringing back that Lakers-Celtics rivalry made it exciting in that fact. It going to Game 7 made it exciting. So even though I didn't care who won necessarily, I still tuned in and I still watched, and it was crazy and it was cool. The other one that I was going to mention is when they played the Magic in the finals as well. Kind of when Kobe, he first did it without Shaq. That was a big stepping stone for him. And that year looked like the Magic, it was their championship to lose.
They almost seemed like the team of destiny.
Yeah, because Dwight Howard was playing at such a level. They also had Hedo Turkoglu. Rashard Lewis, Jameer Nelson, who were all playing like
Yeah.
career basketball that year. And the way they played was very similar to like this day and age of basketball where they shot a lot of threes. Dwight Howard was just big in the middle. And then the Lakers came in and just kind of blew them out, beat them 4-1. And that was just kind of a big surprise. I really wanted the Magic to win that year. So it's basically every time I've kind of rooted against the Lakers, but Kobe's kind of figured out a way to get past it. And that's why it's like, it's still up there in my moments. What's your number 3?
My 3 is the 81-point game. And I wish I could have seen this game like while it was happening, but I'm pretty sure I was only like 9, 10 years old, so had to go to sleep and wake up early for school. But that next morning, seeing it go across the ticker, saying like the history that was made,
Mm-hmm.
and then when I got home from school, seeing the highlights, it was like you were watching a comic book superhero. Like it didn't seem like you were watching a real person do something.
Yeah.
Like it didn't make any sense.
That was for real one of those video game type moments.
No matter who they threw on him, it's still funny to this day how everybody says Jalen Rose got all of the 81.
Yeah.
But somebody dropped a stat like a few weeks ago that said it was like Jalen Rose got like 15, somebody else got 14, somebody else got 12, and then it went like all the way down like 7 players.
Yeah.
Because they just kept throwing everybody at him, and it never worked.
Mhm.
He was in the biggest zone, maybe in basketball history.
Right.
I don't know if we'll see another zone like that. And it was incredible and didn't make sense. And to this day, it still is just outlandish.
Yeah.
What he did. I think he outscored the Raptors through like 3 quarters almost.
Yeah. I think
It was insane.
the only way that could even be possibly broken is if Steve Kerr ever lets Klay Thompson play 4 quarters
Almost
on one of
yeah.
those nights. That's like
Yeah.
the only time that I've ever even thought.
If he let him play past that third quarter when Klay got 60,
Yeah.
he might have hit 80.
But
He had that game.
that's literally the only other time that I've thought that somebody could break that.
Yeah.
Obviously, Wilt Chamberlain's 100 will never probably be broken because the era and how much bigger he was than everybody else at the time. And then that's also what makes Kobe's 81 more impressive. I'll spoil it. Mine's number 3 as well, is the 81-point game. And it's just incredible because in that day and age, like he wasn't shooting that many threes. Nowadays, if somebody were to even get there, it would seem more likely because of how many threes and how up-tempo the game is. And I could understand it, I guess, but I still don't see it happening, which is the crazy thing.
The only person like you could possibly envision it doing, Devin Booker had 70, which
Yeah.
that was insane.
Yeah.
When it happened,
And they had
But-
to force feed him down the
exactly. It was in almost a throwaway game. They
Mhm.
just kept feeding him over and over again, and he was crazy hot.
right.
Which 70 is nuts. He was only 11 away.
Yeah.
Crazy. But I don't even think James Harden can do it
Right.
because he doesn't have the deep like pool of moves, and like Kobe had the post game.
Yeah.
He had his spots on the free throw line where he hit his mid range jumpers. He had the 3-point shot when it was going, and when he was hot, you couldn't even
Yeah.
with a hand in his face, he was hitting that 3. Then he could still drive to the lane and finish, whether it was a layup or a dunk.
Mhm.
I mean, he had everything at every level.
Yeah.
And he was unstoppable.
Well, and I think the other thing too is that guys like James Harden and stuff, he has to work so much more to get his shot off, and he does a lot of moves, and he kind of does
it's
that dancing.
dribble 3.
Yeah. So that's why I
Yeah.
think the only way it would ever happen, I think, is if like it was a Klay Thompson. Like Klay Thompson is probably the best streak scorer in the NBA by far, almost.
James would have to get over 30 free throws in a game.
Yeah.
To even get close to 80.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't see it ever happening. But at the same, like I said, it's so weird because I wouldn't be surprised necessarily because of how many threes.
I think it could happen.
But
If somebody scored 82 in like the next few years, it would be absolutely insane.
yeah.
But it could happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I would hate to see it, but I would love to see it at the same time. LeBron James finally just came out yesterday, I believe, last night or something about on Instagram talking about Kobe and saying that he wants to continue the legacy and everything, and he feels like now he's passed the torch along. That what if LeBron got 82? I don't think he can do it in this day and age, but like it would just be kind of cool.
Yeah,
After he
it'll
says
be
that.
incredible. It really would.
Because that's one thing that I think a lot of people have always pegged LeBron on is that, he's not
aggressive.
he's
As
not
aggressive as he
aggressive
should
enough.
be.
Which he's not a scorer technically, like a lot of people say, and even himself says he doesn't think of himself as a scorer. He can get a hefty amount of buckets, but that's not his play style. But it'd just be kind of interesting if he was able to do it, even though I don't even like him. What's your number 2?
My number 2 is the 2009 championship versus the Orlando Magic. Yeah, this is when at the time I was still a Pistons fan, but the Lakers were my secondary team because of Kobe.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, seeing them win that championship because I like that team so much, it was really cool to see. Besides, I slightly saw the Pistons win a championship when we were younger, but I didn't see the game. And then the only other team that I rooted for that I've seen win a championship was the Steelers in 2008. So they won it in 2008, and then the next year, I start rooting for the Lakers along with the Pistons, and then the Lakers win the championship. So it was great to see my favorite player and a team I rooted for win a championship and do it in such dominant fashion, playing such great basketball. That one, it was really special to me, and it's still special to me. It's the reason why it's probably my favorite or second favorite team, because one of the Pistons teams is probably my first favorites. But yeah, that Lakers team is probably my second favorite all time.
Yeah,
because of that.
And like I said earlier, like that's the biggest part about that one was that was the first championship without Shaq, and a lot of people were starting to think at the time that maybe he couldn't do it because they had started out back in 2000. They won the first three-peat, and then they lost to the Pistons, and then Shaq ended up leaving, going to the Heat and winning a championship, and Kobe was kind of stranded with some really rough Lakers teams for a little while.
And no Phil Jackson for a few years.
Right. And then all of a sudden it just kind of came back together, and Kobe built a team and kind of carried them along for a little bit. And then they just blew out the Magic in the finals. My number 2 is a little bit odd, but I felt like I couldn't leave it off. It's when Kobe lost to the Pistons. And my reasoning for like this being like one of my favorite Kobe moments is just watching the Pistons be able to take on somebody, and like that team was so good back then, like Shaq, Kobe, Gary Payton, Karl Malone, and I just wanted to beat them so bad, so bad. And to be able to see like the talent level of that Lakers team not in person, but like on TV and stuff, I was watching every single night of that series. And being able to see my favorite team take on such a powerhouse, and to realize like why they were such a powerhouse, and realize like how good Kobe was, how good Shaq was at the time. And it gave me that realization of like Kobe's legit. And so that's where like this moment becomes, is that I got a greater respect from Kobe just watching him play.
He was
closely.
almost trying to beat the Pistons single-handedly,
Yeah.
which hurt them in the end. But
Yeah.
that showed you how much of a warrior he was, and how much he wasn't willing to just go out. Yeah,
Right.
I'm just gonna shoot 4 shots.
Yeah.
And try to get Smush Parker and Kareem Rush shots. I'm
Right.
gonna shoot until like win, lose, or draw. I'm gonna lose us this game or win us this game. This will be on me.
Yeah, and and again, that's like where it all started, to where, that Lakers franchise started to kind of fall apart a little bit. And then watching Kobe kind of rebuild it, whereas we said multiple times he almost left, but he stayed with the franchise, and it just kind of culminated into something new, and it turned into like the 24 Kobe, and that was kind of like the transition. And that was kind of the start of it. And so that's why it's kind of it's a weird moment, but it's one of my favorites because it kind of got that thing rolling of where Kobe transitioned his game a bit and just really took over at times. which was cool. What's your number one?
My number one
If
is
mine is the same.
Yeah, it's to this day, it is the most incredible sporting event and performance by a player I've ever seen in my entire life. The last game,
Mm-hmm.
60 points. I mean, before the game, I watched it with my friends in my dorm room, and we were all like placing bets on what how many points he'd end up with. I think I ended up saying I thought like 35 to 40 was like the most possible thing.
Yeah.
Like him going out with 40, that just made so much sense to me.
Right.
And he started out slow, then he started getting it going. And once he got like 35, I was like, "Oh, this is probably going to happen. This is cool. Okay, like 40 points to end it is great." And then it just turned into something
Mm-hmm.
else completely. He went 7 of 7 in the fourth quarter. He didn't miss a single shot. And it just got it was like an out of body experience. Each shot it didn't make sense
Yeah.
how at his age, coming off of his injuries, it's like he tapped into something completely else. It's why his nickname is the Black Mamba. It's why him and Michael Jordan are the only two level of assassins they are in NBA history. No other player ever can pull off what he did in that last game.
Yeah.
After all of the Achilles injuries, the knee injuries, his age, for him to be able to pull off that type of clutch, nonstop focused performance,
Yep.
when everybody around him, the highest of celebrities, the most well-known athletes, they're all there front row watching him to see what he would do in the very last game. And nobody had expectations for him to do anything like that.
Yeah.
But it's unexplainable
Mm-hmm.
to watch over and over again what he did in that second half and in that fourth quarter.
Yeah.
And how relentless he was. Yeah, it was insane.
And there's a couple cool stories from that game as well. One being that Shaq and Kobe had a bet going into the game where Shaq bet that he couldn't get 50.
Yeah.
And so then Kobe got 60, and then Shaq goes back on social media and uses a couple not kid-friendly words and says, "I can't believe that he got 60." So that was cool. And then the other thing that I heard a lot of sports reporters and stuff was that on that night was when the Warriors were going for their 73rd win to break the record by the Bulls. And so they had to pick, am I going to go to Kobe's final game or see the Warriors break the record? And a lot of the guys that went to the Warriors game were very disappointed because that game was kind of a blowout.
Yeah.
And the Warriors won easily. Yeah, they set the record. Yeah, it was exciting.
They missed out on one of the
But then they all,
greatest sporting events.
most of them, what I've heard is that they stayed at Oracle watching the Lakers game,
Yeah.
just in shock and very disappointed that they didn't go. And the other cool thing about that game was it wasn't like, yes, they obviously force-fed him shots and got him going.
It's what all of us wanted.
Right.
We wouldn't have minded if he took 100 shots.
Yeah.
We just
But-
it was about Kobe.
But at the end, like, he was efficient on the night. He shot
yeah,
like 50% from the field or something like
exactly.
that. So he shot a lot of shots.
He ended up.
But he was
I think
efficient.
it was like 29 of 50.
Yeah, something
end,
like that.
yeah.
He was efficient. He won them the game.
He also knocked Utah out of the playoffs.
Yeah.
People forget about that
Yeah,
part.
it knocked
Like Utah would have gotten to the playoffs if they won that game.
that was a meaningful game for Utah, and it was a meaningful game for Kobe Bryant as well.
Yeah.
So it made it so much more exciting because there was actually things on the line. It wasn't a throwaway game where he's just going to go out and score 60. It was close. It was competitive. He won the game for them and sent Utah packing for the summer. So there was like so many storylines within that game. And like you said, for him at that age, after all that he's gone through, to be able to pull that out after he hadn't had a great farewell season overall. And he just decided this was going to be it. He's going to go out with a bang. It's one of the greatest walk-off sporting moments of all time.
It's the greatest, and I think it's by a large margin. I don't think we'll ever see anything like it again. It was a moment in time that was just magical
Yeah.
and unbelievable to watch. And I don't think we'll ever see an athlete focused like that again.
Yeah. And the only other thing that I can even think of that's even slightly close, and it's not close, is Derek Jeter's walk-off win for the Yankees in his last game.
Yeah.
But that game wasn't meaningful.
Yeah.
So it didn't really matter. But like that's the only thing I can even think of. So for Kobe to do that was incredible. Incredible. But yeah, it's rough to lose somebody like that in the sporting world, especially with all the other young kids on board and the families. So I just feel for those families and hope that they can somehow find recovery and everything, and get it all figured out. Tonight's game was going to be the Lakers and Clippers on ESPN, or I think it was TNT. They postponed that game, the NBA did, which was kind of a surprise, but probably needed. We've seen guys like Kyrie Irving didn't even play in his game the other night. He just didn't want to go, and so he left. And then even in the Pistons-Cavaliers game, Larry Nance Jr. left right after warmups for a little bit, and he came back a little bit into the first quarter, I believe. But it just shows you how many players are kind of having it rough. So I think it was a good thing for the game to be postponed. But I kind of wanted to see it because it's both LA teams on national television, especially with the TNT crew being Shaq and Charles. And I don't want to I would never want to pressure even media to go on and have to do that necessarily, but it would be cool, I think, to see what tribute would have been done or what's to say they would have done. So we'll have to see what their next step is going to be. I don't know if they canceled the other game or not. I think it's just the LA game. But I'm sure multiple teams are still going to do all the 24-second and 8-second violations in the coming week or so. So we'll have to follow that. One last thing I'll also talk about before we get into the other little sports tidbits before we head off. People are saying that now you should no longer play the game of 21. You have to play the game of 24. And
call it Kobe, yeah.
And if you go, you play ones and twos up to 24, and if I don't even remember what the set number is, but if you miss like the game winner, you have to go back to 8 or something. I'm like,
I like it.
I'm
I
down.
like it, yeah.
So that's interesting. Again, it's a rough loss for the sports and just the world in general because he's a global icon. I guess the other thing I'll say too is that I thought was interesting is that Nike has even pulled all the Kobe stuff off their shelves, stopped their stocking of that, which is it's cool because there's a lot of resellers that would take advantage of that. So I think that was a good smart move by Nike to see. And yeah, I mean, it's still weird, and I don't think anybody's really gonna get over it for a while. It's weird. It's hard to process, especially as a sports fan. You never expect to really go through something like this, but I think it affects us all. And it's really cool to see though that it like brings people together. So, rest in peace, Kobe, Gianna, and all the 7 other people.
Yep. Praise to Vanessa Bryant.
It's a rough one. Moving on to other news, there's actually a Super Bowl coming up on Sunday.
Big game.
No, everybody seems to have forgotten about it, but it's exciting. Niners. Who are they playing? The Chiefs. See, it's totally gone.
Yeah.
Defense versus offense. I'm still excited for it. Just being thrown off though this week, obviously. But let's make predictions right away. Who do you got?
After thinking about it for a while, I think I have to go with the Chiefs. Right now, Patrick Mahomes is on a level in the playoffs that we haven't seen maybe ever. Besides, this is going to sound crazy, but that run Joe Flacco had in the playoffs in 2012 is one of the best playoff runs a quarterback has ever had.
Thank you.
He threw like 11 touchdowns to no interceptions in that playoff run, which is insane.
Yeah.
But Pat Mahomes has been on an even higher level than that. He's on the MVP level he was on last season in the playoffs. And this 49ers defense is ferocious. The front 7 is going to get after him. but he's in such a zone right now. I mean, running the ball, throwing the deep down, he's so accurate, he's so focused, he's so tapped in that I think the 49ers have to shut them out for like at least a quarter and a half for them to have a chance in this game.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you let Kansas City score 1 and you let him get a little bit of confidence, he's already coming into the game with confidence.
Right.
But if you let him score in that fourth quarter, it might get ugly fast because he's going to score once he gets the ball 3 or 4 more times. And there's almost nothing you can do about it. Nonstop pressure has to happen. Bosa has to be in his face. DeForest Buckner has to be in his face. Solomon Thomas. And the secondary, the 49ers have a really good secondary. Richard Sherman has had a really good year. They've got some guys back there. They have to be at the top of their game, the best they've played all season. And guarding
Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, Tyreek Hill. Sammy Watkins is playing the best football of his career. Who's going to guard Travis Kelce? He's a mismatch for almost everybody in the league.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm not sure how the 49ers are going to do it. Jimmy Garoppolo has played some really good games this season, but he has to be extremely on point, top-notch, barely missing throws this game. The Chiefs have the advantage in this one. And I think it's going to be hard. They have to play almost perfect defense to stop Patrick Mahomes, and I'm not sure if they can.
Yeah. I'm actually going with the Niners. I keep hearing people keep talking about the Chiefs, and they're just going to roll over the Niners. And I feel like people are forgetting the Niners. One quick little note that I'll add. I saw a thing about the AFC championships of the last 20 years or so, and it's like Roethlisberger, Brady, Manning. My favorite part about that is Joe Flacco is like right in the middle of that graphic, and it's the funniest thing I've ever seen. I love it. But the Niners, I just think that they're going to figure it out because people forget that like the Chiefs defense isn't very good either. So
they're okay. They've played a lot better in the playoffs.
And I keep thinking that if the Niners are able to pull out in front early, the way that they control the ball with their run game, the way that their defense slows down offenses, I know you can't entirely slow Patrick Mahomes, but I think they can slow him down enough. But I think it's still going to be somewhat of a high-scoring game. Like my prediction will be probably like a 38-30 or something.
Yeah, even more than getting stops, they have to create turnovers on Pat Mahomes.
Yeah.
They got to pick off a few passes.
And the only thing is, too, like Jimmy Garoppolo hasn't had to do anything in the playoffs yet. They haven't had to throw the ball yet, which I expect in this game they're going to. But I just like how the 49ers have done so many different like little trick plays here and there with their run game that it keeps defenses guessing. Like, yeah, they run Mostert all the time, but then they'll run a reverse with Deebo Samuel. Then they'll run a double reverse with Deebo Samuel. And then it just keeps the defense somewhat honest, even though they're just running the ball. And then that sets up other options that they can pass if the Chiefs just decide we're going to try to stop the run and stop the run only. Then I think Jimmy Garoppolo has enough weapons that they can do something and they can figure it out. And he's been pretty good this season. Obviously, it's not going to be easy going up against Patrick Mahomes, but I'm more inclined to think that the Kansas City defense is more likely to fail than the San Francisco's offense is to fail. And I think that's where the difference is going to be. Because I think the Niners defense is great. The Chiefs offense is great. So out of the weaknesses, I feel like the defense of the Chiefs is worse than the offense of the Niners, if that makes sense.
I would agree with you. If we were talking about this like a few weeks ago, I would have agreed, but seeing how good the Chiefs defense has played in these past 2 games, Tyrann Mathieu has been phenomenal. Sorensen, their linebacker, has been just crushing people. Their D-line has been playing better. Yeah, they're not one of the best defenses in the league. They've been average and below average a lot of times this season, but they're hitting a sweet spot right now. And I think if they can stop the 49ers run game from the beginning and Jimmy Garoppolo has to somewhat try to win the game for them, I think it's going to get a little sketchy.
Yeah.
Because with Tyrann Mathieu back there, he's gonna make a play sooner or later.
Mhm.
His instincts are too good. He's been playing too well this season. Tyrann Mathieu will get Jimmy Garoppolo if they rely on the passing game too much. And I also think their receiving core, besides Emmanuel Sanders, their receiving core is inexperienced.
Yeah.
They're going to be keying on George Kittle. That'll be a tough matchup for them, but if you key on George Kittle and let the rest of the DBs handle the 49ers receivers, I think the 49ers receivers they may get it turned into one of the best receiving cores in the league in a year or two, but they're not there yet. And I think Emmanuel Sanders isn't as explosive as he used to be. So if the 49ers have to establish that running game from the jump, because
Yeah.
if they don't, then it starts to get questionable.
Yeah. I think too, kind of like I've kind of talked about a little bit, is that I do think that the Niners kind of have to get on board first. Maybe not score first, but they have to get momentum
Yeah.
first to where they can kind of build a little bit of a lead, because it's so much harder to come back on on a team like the Chiefs, because then you have to start throwing passes and then you end up giving the Chiefs more time, and it just doesn't work into the Niners' favor. The one thing that I think will help them, especially on their defense, not only is their defense great, but they have Richard Sherman back there who's been in big games like this. And I'm just hoping that he can kind of rally his team and especially his defense, because they are going to need their defense to step up even more than they already have. Like, they've been one of the best defenses in the NFL this year, and this is their biggest game. And I think that Richard Sherman can get them ready for this. Obviously, he's a super smart player, knows what he's doing. Obviously, his athletic abilities have declined a little bit, but his knowledge of the game and just his awareness is so good that I think he can get his other guys going. And I think for a guy like Nick Bosa, who's so young, I think just the way that, especially just the Bosas in general, how they are and their tenacity, I think he's going to be ready for this kind of game, even though he's so young. Um, and I think just that enough, they're going to get enough fire from their defense. Obviously, they're going to have to make turnovers, but I mean, the Chiefs might not have a running game. Like, Damian Williams has been very up and down this season, mostly down. And Patrick Mahomes has been their leading rusher the last 2 playoff games, I believe. Uh, so that's something that the Niners can key in on, and they can play a little bit deeper in their passing game, passing defense, and stuff like that. So it's going to be really interesting. Like I said, it's 2 exciting teams, but in different ways.
Yeah, when it comes to the 49ers offense, I think the main thing is the biggest reason why I think the Chiefs will win this game is because they've seen different looks in the past few weeks. They've seen the Titans try to play the control the clock game, control the time of possession game, and it didn't work for them. They had Derrick Henry. The Chiefs figured out a way to stop him when they needed to. And just like the 49ers, the Titans' young receiving core, some guys that could be really good soon, but not as good. I mean, they're good right now, but not as explosive as they need to be to beat the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs have seen so many looks on the other team's offenses to where they try to play the control the clock game, and they figured it out. Maybe Kyle Shanahan is a more experienced coach than Mike Vrabel was.
Yeah.
Kyle Shanahan has been in this game for a long time, and I'm sure he's going to have some things ready, locked and loaded, like those trick plays.
Yeah.
He's going to have things ready to knock them off. But if you try to throw it with Pat Mahomes and try to go quarterback to quarterback, that's not going to work. The time of possession thing hasn't worked against the Chiefs either. So just seeing how the 49ers go at this thing on the offensive side of the ball is going to be really interesting.
Yeah. My only counter to that is that I think the Titans did decent. Derrick Henry had a bad game, and they still came up somewhat close. I think the 49ers are a much better team in that regard, so that maybe they could take that and use that as motivation going into this game. We only have less than a minute left. What's your prediction?
My prediction is Chiefs 35, 49ers 21.
Okay. I'm going to stick with my 38-30 because I can't think of a better one. I got the Niners. Go ahead.
Actually, I'll let you finish and then
No, that's all.
Okay, I'm going to go 41-21 actually. I think Pat Mahomes has like 3 passing touchdowns and they kind of extend it near the end.
Okay. Next week, we'll talk about some college basketball. It's been a little bit sad around here for college basketball. We'll recap the Super Bowl.
For one side, it's been good for Michigan State.
Yeah, we'll recap the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And
also got to talk about that kid in New Orleans.
Yeah, there's a couple things in the NBA, and we'll be right around trade deadline time.
Yeah.
It'll be next week, so we'll have some things to talk about in the NBA as well. But this has been Views from the Sidelines. We'll see you guys next time.
I signed a petition yesterday, Joey.
Change the
I think
logo.
I might have to send it to you. Make the NBA logo Kobe's fadeaway. I guarantee Jerry West would be behind it. Just come out with a press conference in the next few days or next week. Announce that the logo is going to be changed for the 2021 season. I think everybody would be behind it. Let's get that fadeaway as the NBA logo. R.I.P. Black Mamba.